everybody. It's time for the first episode of our Invincible series we're doing here on the Vactor-Verse. I am Vactor. He is Shoff. Shoff, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing real good, real good.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing excellent because we're going to be talking about Invincible, which, spoiler alert, is now my favorite show on television. And we're going to tell you why right now. We did not talk about the first season of Invincible, so we'll get a little quick first season, and then we'll go right into this season 2, episode 1, A Lesson for Your Next Life. I'll kick it off real quick, Shuff, since I never talked about it here in the Vactor-Verse.
Sure.
Season 1 of Invincible was fantastic, and it had a high bar to meet. My expectations were through the roof because I was a huge fan of the comic series. So when the adaptation came out, and it came out during the pandemic, during that lockdown time, it was like the perfect time to watch it. My wife had just given birth to my son, so we had a lot of time on our hands to watch stuff. So she had never read the comic series, so getting to experience it through her eyes was an amazing experience for me. What did you think about season 1 of Invincible, Shaw?
So I watched it, I binged it, and I binged it in preparation for season 2. So I did not experience it the way that you did. Now, I don't know, did they release episodes weekly back when they first? Okay, so you had that gap of time, and I always think that's an interesting development, like when you choose to wait and binge it all at once or like at your leisure versus it being like a weekly thing where you have to wait to see what happens next. So I binged all the first season. I binged that Adam Eve special that they have on there, which was really cool to go in the backstory of Adam Eve. And then I also supplemented all of that by reading the source material. And I think I'm up to issue 20 or 21. I'm reading them by the compendiums. So I'm on the first compendium, but within that compendium, it's weird. I think after like issue 20, then it said issue 0. So I was like, oh, I'm a little confused here. So I had put a pause on that. I was reading something else and I haven't come back to it yet. It's interesting to see where the show went their own way, and also how they adapted stuff to fit it all within like a 10-episode season or whatever it was. So really exceptional stuff. I was surprised, and I'm sad that I slept on it, but I'm kind of glad I did because it gave me a chance to really absorb it in like a all the way through way, just kind of be like, all right, I'm knuckling down. I'm going to make this happen. It's a lot of fun. And I'm really enjoying reading the comics after the fact, which we talked a little bit about. We talked about how some people prefer to read the book and then see the movie or the TV show, or vice versa, watch and then read. And so you've got the first approach, I've got the second, and I kind of prefer the second approach. I'm not going to lie.
Dang.
Yeah.
Well, as we talk about the adaptation, let's get your thoughts on that as we go through it, because I'm curious to hear about that. And you have a much more recent take on the comics. For me, it's been like 15 years since I've read them. So I do need a little bit of a refresher, but let's get right into season 2, episode 1, A Lesson for Your Next Life. I just want to start off season 1 and season 2. The first thing that came to my mind was whoever is the casting director on the show needs to win an award, because this voice cast is fantastic. Like top to bottom, every single character from the mains to the background voices, supporting cast, everyone is fantastic. And I do like how on Amazon they do this thing called X-ray, where
I love X-ray.
You can see relative to whatever the scene is, who the voice actors are, what the music is playing. And there's even a little shop to the Invincible store on Amazon. Got to get the Amazon plug in there. But I just love like confirming, because this is something that I do on a regular basis with my wife. I'll pause it, and most of the time I'm able to pick up the actors just by their voice, and sometimes I'll quiz my wife. You know who that is? She has her favorites, but I like X-Ray gives me the confirmation. I don't have to go to Google and see, oh, was I right or was I wrong? So that to me, number one off the bat, like I love this voice cast in Invincible. Stephen Yeun and J.K. Simmons, like, I feel like they were made for these roles, and we didn't
Really
see him in
do.
this episode, but in the first season, Seth Rogen as Alan the alien. I was like, how is that going to work? When I first cast him, I was like, wait a minute. But then when I heard his voice,
Hey, you're early, and you shaved your mustache.
I was like, okay, this sounds right. This sounds good.
You mean I'm supposed to be not fighting somebody on Earth?
I love this cast. What do you think about as a voice actor yourself, show off as a talented voice actor yourself? What do you think about this cast?
I love it. I love it. I agree with you completely. Although I think that they're pretty heavy-handed, but they're smart too in the amount of roles they give to. I'm literally blinking on his name. He voices the Immortal as well as a bunch of the Guardians.
Yes, and he was the in Endgame and Infinity War. He was the
exactly,
Red Skull
as Red Skull. Yes.
Let me look him up real quick as you're talking.
While you're talking, and then Grey Griffin.
Ross Marquand.
Thank you, Ross Marquand. Yeah, he does a bunch, but he's an extremely talented man when it comes to voice acting and impressions. He does a lot of really great impressions of a lot of famous actors and actresses and celebrities. And then Grey Griffin.
Yes, she does a ton.
She does a ton, but she's extremely prolific. She's been in the voice acting world for a long time, and you name it, she's probably done it or been in some franchise or whatever. Like she's very successful at what she does.
Yes.
But they've done amazing, and this season is no less. I mean, we got Sterling K. Brown as Angstrom Levy, and that is, you just said it, chef's kiss. Sterling K. Brown is an amazing actor, first and foremost.
Yes.
His work on This Is Us, incredible. He's so realistic and in his approach. He really is. I wouldn't call him an actor so much as a reactor. Like he really understands in a scene, like how to be present for the scene and really how to make it feel like you're just watching real people interact with each other. Like it's not acting. You're not pretending. He's just reacting. And that's really what you want to do. And then you've got his work in Black Panther, which he was excellent in, and everything else. Like he is no stranger to really great character pieces, and this is going to really stretch him because of the aspect of Angstrom Levy's role in this.
Yes.
And it's kind of heartbreaking. Honestly, this first episode's a little bit heartbreaking for his character because he's got such a really noble desire to help the world he's on by leveraging the brilliance of other worlds, and that really backfires in a big way.
There's something in our differences in approach. I already knew he was going to become a villain because of the comics. When you were watching it, did you have any sense that because he's working with the Mauler twins, like he was going to turn out to be a bad guy, or like how did you take that?
I think the comics, unless I'm mistaken, I feel like the comics are a little bit more heavy-handed that he, I guess, is going to be a baddie. Like,
yeah, I don't remember having sympathy for him like I did in this.
Yeah, I feel like the way they approached it in the show showcased a softer side that is, in a sense, getting completely like garbled by the memories of all these other multiversal dimensional counterparts. Because he mentioned, and it's kind of like a throwaway line, but if you pay attention to it, it really makes more sense why he's now has his laser sights set on taking out Invincible, is because in a majority of the dimensions that he's visited, Invincible and Omni-Man team up.
Yes.
And they conquer Earth in preparation for the Viltrum Empire or however. Yeah. And that, first of all, is really interesting to me. And also the way they started this episode at the very top with showcasing, it's a little bit jarring because you see Invincible and you're like, okay, well, this is my guy. This is Invincible. This is where we're picking up where we left off. Yep. No, it's a completely different dimension, completely different universe.
That wasn't in the comics, right? From my memory.
Oh,
I don't remember
was.
that.
It was.
Oh, it was. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
And in fact, even the Immortal fight was also in the comics as well.
Ooh, okay. And that's very much like Days of Future Past, the X-Men, like dystopian future. And that's one thing that I really like about Invincible is it's playing off of our expectations of superhero comics. Like,
Yep.
as fans of superhero comics, at this point, movies, TV shows, the MCU, the DCEU, we have this collective knowledge, this pop culture knowledge of all of these things. And Invincible, both in the comics and now in this show, is just like a commentary on those things, and also kind of subverts your expectations because you're thinking, oh wait, like you just mentioned, this is my guy. Like, oh, this is who we thought from season one. Nope, it's a multiversal doppelganger. It's somebody that is an evil version of who we know. So I love that opening because it got me. I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it really confuses the audience in a very purposeful way so that the payoff can be greater. And then you're like, oh,
Yes.
dang. But then we cut back to our Invincible from our universe, or I say our, but the one that we're familiar with.
I mean, yep.
And he's kind of just going through the motions because he's in this place of being a little bit shell shock and PTSD, and he knows he's got to like use his superhero powers, but he's still reeling from the aftermath of this betrayal on extreme levels from his dad / the most powerful man on Earth, or was on Earth. I like that the show doesn't shy away from that kind of the aftershocks, which is really what this episode is a focus on. It's the aftershocks of what went down, and I think that's great.
And him trying to come into his own of, okay, now what? Do I still continue on this path? Do I work with Cecil, who, by the way, Cecil, voiced by Walton Goggins, who I love. That's another actor that is a chef's kiss for me when they announced that Walton Goggins was going to be Cecil. And I always like Cecil in the comics as well. So he's doing a fantastic job here. But I'm loving the storylines of Invincible and of the Guardians of the Globe and that team dynamic. I'm loving these two intersections of the stories and how he wants to join the team. And then we had that great scene of, are they the Guardians of the Globe at this point? I think
yes.
Okay. So I love seeing their interactions, and it was Jason Mantzoukas, I think one of our favorite actors and comedians, and seeing all of those guys working together. That was a lot of fun, and I'm really liking where that's going to go in this season. Them trying to become a team.
Yeah, and it's good to see them not like totally meshing and jiving and having some issues. That's definitely aligned with the comic books as well. Although it happened a lot earlier in the comic books that Cecil was sort of like taking issue with them and stuff, and bringing in Bulletproof and Immortal.
I have some future knowledge. I'm not going to say anything because I know where you're at in the comics. I really like Jason Mantzoukas. His portrayal of Rexplode makes me like him more. I did not really like him in the comics, but I just love Jason Mantzoukas' performance and his voice. He just makes me laugh. Listening anytime I hear his voice, just makes me smile.
You know what I think is the charm of Zooks is that he's just a scoundrel. Like, in any role, in anything he does, he is a scoundrel, and we can't help but like that. Like Han Solo, scoundrel. Like we cannot help but enjoy these characters. And I just finished binging Twisted Metal on Peacock, and when he popped up out of nowhere as part of the Holy Men gang and played the role of Preacher, which is an actual character from the Twisted Metal franchise, and one of my favorites, one that I would play as when I was playing the game like pretty regularly. I lost it. I was loving every second of it. So I've had a definite like massive influx of Zooks in my consumption of television, and I'm loving it.
Yes, man. I don't think he's ever done anything that I haven't liked. No. So, like I said, just another feather in the cap. But
what's up, jerks?
He definitely makes me like or care about Rexplode a lot more than I did in the comics. Another one is Zachary Quinto. That's an actor that I love as Spock, and hearing his like monotone delivery of Robot. Like that, even though Robot's face kind of is off-putting and makes me kind of creeps me out. It's like I love Zachary Quinto, so I love hearing his voice and his portrayal. So this is a thing where the comics, it's in your mind, right? Like you're reading their or you're hearing their voices in your mind. But these actors, this is something that I think the show can deliver that the comics can't, is these human performances, and what each actor brings to their part is something special, and that's something that adds to it. So just uh, that's a difference between reading the comics and watching the show. So just like I said from the start, fantastic casting job, and I'm loving it. Also, something I'm loving, Shaw, is the Mauler twins. Who
Yes.
Kevin Michael Richardson is also one of my favorite voice actors. These guys are supposed to be bad guys, but even in the first season, you're the clone. No, I'm the original, and you're the clone. Like
Right.
that whole back
Yeah.
and forth. Like it, and my wife also loved the first season, and she loved their back and forth of who is the clone and who is not.
Well,
And it just continues in this season.
and the shtick of them always like somehow breaking out of this like very well protected prison for super powered people. That's always like some scheme, and typically in these past couple of times, it's always been people who are on like the good side of the fence who are needing their help. So, like Robot was first season, and then now we've got this. So,
and at the end of this one, I'm never working for anybody else again. I'm only working for myself. So
I'm glad that at least one Mauler twin survived, because I was like, oh man, did they wipe out all of them? I was like, they were fun. They were fun.
Yeah.
So,
and it was also cool when they had the multiversal Maulers.
Yes.
They had like the Monster Girl variant Mauler, like the Mauler that looked like Monster Girl, and they had all the different ones being true villains. At that point, I was like, nah, I'm not with these guys. Like our main Maulers are the ones that I feel for. But yeah, they've just been great. And I think again, like we said, Shaw, Sterling K. Brown to me stole this episode. Like his performance as Angstrom Levy was fantastic, and another character that I didn't really care about in the comics, but in the show, I'm much more sympathetic. I'm like, oh dang,
yeah.
And then also the fact that he sacrificed to save Invincible, really,
Yeah.
that was like, this is like a hero's intro. Even though he ends up, becoming kind of crazy with all the memories, it was like that is a noble thing that he did for sure. So it's like this is not just black and white. This is like shades of gray for this guy. So I'm really loving what they're doing with him.
Yeah, and we get some early indications of Mark's mom being an alcoholic, which we see a lot. At least I've seen a lot more so far in the 20 issues I've read of Invincible. Although they've swapped out. It's not Olga that she drinks with. It's costumer guy. I can't think of his name. I don't remember.
Is it? Dang, yeah, and he's voiced by Mark Hamill in the first season.
That's right. And then I think there is someone that she does, another like female that she does drink with, but I can't remember her name. I don't think it's Olga though. I liked Jay Farrow as Bulletproof.
Yeah.
The only downside with casting Jay Farrow is like he's so great at other voices.
Right.
And he's just playing himself. Like he's just doing a Jay Farrow voice.
Yeah. Right.
I wanted to call out one thing. It's totally like just isolated, but the moment where in the beginning where we see the other version of Invincible, the multiversal Invincible, he paralyzes Adam Eve.
Yes.
Instead of killing her. I'm like, that's not a mercy situation. That's not showing mercy on someone. That's like and I don't want to be defined as some kind of ableist here, but when you are going to actively make someone a quadriplegic instead of killing them, that to me seems like a fate worse than death. She can't move anything below her neck. She's stuck in this state. She's basically a prisoner in her own body.
Right.
I feel for anybody in that situation. And I would think that if I were in that position and I didn't have any control of any of my extremities and I was in a perpetual state of maybe pain, I don't know, just left with my thoughts. And that's all I don't even know if she could talk. Who knows? At this point, that to me seems like an awful position to be in. So
yeah,
just heartbreaking. I mean, granted, that's not our Adam Eve that we're used to, but whew, I also think it's interesting that Steven Yeun is Invincible, and then we know that in the Thunderbolts movie for Marvel, he's supposed to be playing, or rumored to be playing, the Sentry, which is basically Marvel's answer to like a Superman character.
Right.
And Invincible has all those power sets, just about all those power sets.
Yes.
So, I mean, we're already hearing the voice of what will be a live action version of Invincible in a Marvel setting. So I thought that's
interesting.
Kind of interesting how that's.
Yeah. Did you hear they're also doing an Invincible live action project?
No.
Yeah, that's in the works right now. It's in the early stages. So we'll see.
Maybe that's what Sterling K. Brown was getting really ripped for.
Ooh.
Everyone knows, like, he's getting ripped to be Commissioner Gordon, and then he just wore a trench coat the whole time. Like, no.
Oh man. Yeah, this is gonna be fantastic. I really like the direction and the adaptation of this comic book. Like the way that they've done, I think this is the perfect way to do an adaptation. The way that it's not necessarily exactly like the comics. I think they have the benefit of hindsight now in 2023 versus when the comic was coming out in 2003. There's a lot of things that I think Robert Kirkman was like, I could probably do this a little bit better. And this is what I would have done if I was writing the comic today. So I like that aspect of it. I like that it's not a carbon copy clone. That's always, for me, a bad thing with an adaptation. I'm like, if it's the exact same thing, I can just go read the comic. And I think that's a better experience. This one, it's bringing something different to it. And so that's the type of adaptation that I like. Also, not the opposite, the extreme end of, well, this doesn't resemble the original thing that it's adapting. So I think they're doing a great job so far on this adaptation.
Can I make a hot take on this, on what you're saying there?
Let's hear this.
I would argue that the changes made from the source material to the TV adaptation are all better choices. I think that it only serves to enhance and improve upon the source material. It never feels like they took the worst option. It always feels like what they decided to do only served to make it better, more interesting, more fun. So every decision they made to try and encapsulate a very robust storyline and lore content that's out there. Like, I mean, we're talking like 150 plus issues, I think.
Yeah.
Spread across 3 compendiums. Like, there's a lot out there. And I'm still reading stuff into issue 20 that hasn't even happened in the first season. But also there's stuff that I'm reading that's happening in season 2 now. So the way that they were able to sort of like combine, mix it all together, like, it really is a brilliant adaptation. And they've done an exceptional job.
Yes, man. I can't wait, Shaw, for more Invincible. This episode was a great first start to this new season. And I just, even though we haven't seen it yet, so we don't know the full extent of season 2. In my mind, I'm like, this is going to be too short. There's just not going to be enough. I want more Invincible. We're getting the first 4 episodes week to week, and then they're taking a hiatus, taking a break, and then they're coming back and giving us another 4. So I'm like, man, I just already feel like it's not enough. But
I wonder why they're breaking.
I haven't heard anything on that.
My only guess is that maybe they're waiting for what would be, because if it's going to release into February, I think that's like sweeps time frame for TV shows. So maybe they're trying to like take advantage of those numbers. I don't know.
Yeah. I haven't heard any interviews or anything. And we were even confused. You and I were talking as we were planning this podcast. We were like, is this going to all drop at once? Is it going to be weekly?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I would be interested to hear the behind the scenes on Invincible and see what's going on. But I'm glad it's back, Shoff. I'm glad that we're getting more Invincible. Did you have any other hot takes, Shoff, before we get out of here?
I thought it was funny that Immortal got his arms and heads or whatever all ripped off. That's like his destiny. No matter what universe he's in, he's gonna get ripped apart. I thought that was funny. I loved the opening scene to the tune of Radiohead's Karma Police. That was a perfect track. We talked about music as a perfect track for what he was like going through the motions on all of that. So yeah. But all in all, great. Can't wait for episode 2.
Yes, I can't wait. And I can't wait to have you back, dear listener, dear viewer, for another episode of our Invincible review and our Invincible breakdown for season 2 on Amazon Prime Video. Thank you very much for joining us. Before we get out of here, just want to let everybody know we do have a way that you can give back to the Vactor-Verse and show us some love. We have super thanks, super chats. If we ever decide to do live, we're going to have super chats where people can send us donations as we're talking live. But for now, we're just doing the pre-recorded stuff. So super thanks right down below where you can like the video. There's a little thanks button and you can click on that and give us a small donation or whatever your heart's desire that we can put back into the show to bring you more in the Vactor-Verse. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Shaw, for joining us. You did fantastic as always. I'm always happy to have you, my friend.
Thank you.
Can't wait for the next episode of Invincible. Shaw, take us out.
Vactor and I think Mark should think, Mark, think. And you should too.
Shaw, what would you do if one day you woke up to discover that your dad was Superman? Let's just say you're high school Shaw. What would high school Shaw do if he woke up one day working at McDonald's and all of a sudden he said, "My dad is Superman"? What would you say? How would that affect your life, Shaw?
I mean, nothing against my dad, but he's never been like the svelte, like muscular, super tall guy.
Not
so
like
like
Shaw.
to me, that would be kind of a funny Superman, I think. You know, like to have like a dad bod Superman. Like I think there's
We
a
just
market
came
for
up.
that.
Shaw just came up with comic book gold. Everybody,
Right?
don't
Yeah.
steal that idea.
Dad bod Superman.
That would be amazing. Well, he is Shaw. I am Vactor. We are the Vactor-Verse. We are here talking about Invincible Season 2, Episode 2. Last week we talked about Episode 1, had some nice engagement on YouTube, had some nice responses. So thank you everybody for tuning in. And thank you for tuning in this week as we talk about, in about 6 hours, I lose my virginity to a fish. I like these episode titles. I think they're like very comic booky, like what a comic book title would be. So I'm loving these so far. But that says a lot about this episode, Shaw. We got to see a lot of stuff. But overall, we both enjoyed episode 1. We were into it. What did you think about episode 2, Shaw? Are they keeping it rolling? Are they keeping this gravy train rolling?
I don't think so.
Woo!
Yeah, I felt like it kind of derailed a little bit. I felt like it lost a lot of the momentum established in the first episode. And to me, it felt a little bit like filler. It felt like they were satisfying some storylines that obviously happened in the comic books, which is their ultimate goal. They're adapting the source material and doing it in fresh ways, which we'll get to in a moment. Like the massive stuff that went down at the end of last week's episode, to like not even address it and kind of just go on as if nothing happened. And then we only get this little snippet at the end showing Angstrom Levy on a different Earth, interrogating Invincible, trying to understand like what does it take to take you down, kind of thing. Like that to me was the most interesting. So I felt like the episode did too much of trying to stay away from what was going to be the most interesting thing for me, at least.
I think I know I don't know anything behind the scenes, but my assumption is that Angstrom is going to be the main baddie for this whole season.
Yeah.
So I think they're saving that for the end. We'll see once the season wraps up.
You bring up a great point. And I think that also kind of ties into how the first season was structured, because we saw Omni-Man just totally annihilate the Guardians of the Globe. And then they don't touch on that. Like in terms of like the details of that, it kind of like takes a little while. There's a slow burn. And then we come back to all of that revealing itself much, much later in the season. And I think that's kind of, like you said, that's how they're kind of building it this way, structuring it with creating the person, letting it simmer, and then kind of coming to that like explosive conclusion or however it's going to be. So,
yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I think I was a little bit more positive on this episode than Shaw. I very much enjoyed episode 2. The opening with Doc Seismic had me lolling, Shoff. I was loving this goofy, like uh, comic booky villain, and once again, we talked about the voice cast last week. Once again, this episode just proved it. These voice actors or these actors playing multiple roles.
Right.
Chris, I'm going to mess up his name. Chris Dianopoulos played Doc Seismic, but he plays a ton of characters in this show. Reginald Vell Johnson playing the principal, which that is a deep cut Easter egg from the comic books, but they brought it over to the show and actually got him, because in the comics he goes to Reginald Vell Johnson High School, and the art looks like the actor, but they actually got the actor to come on and do his voice
Yeah.
15 years later. So it's like in the background of my mind, I've been waiting for this day for 15 years, but it's fantastic to have him once again. So love hearing him as always and seeing him on the screen. What did you think, Shoff, about the Adam Eve storyline that's going on? Kind of her, and this plays off of that special that they did. The background
so
of her.
that's a great point. So I'm really interested in that whole storyline and the dynamic between her and her step parents, or not step parents, foster parents, I guess you could say. I feel like for a lot of people, if they're not watching that special, that prequel, that does them a disservice when it comes to appreciating the dynamics of this episode, because you don't really understand what's driving this wedge between them. If that was understood a little bit better, maybe through better previously on Invincible or whatever, like if they like showcase that a little better, I think that we might be able to empathize with everybody all around, versus it just seeming like the dad is just a total like a-hole, like he's so nasty to her, and she is trying to help in the best way that she knows possible, and it just doesn't, all sides are not seen because we don't have that prequel, as it's not viewed as required viewing. It's like it's helpful, it's supplemental, but I think it needed to be included. And I think not like you have to download it, but like I think that it would benefit viewers if they all had a chance to sit through it. Maybe they did. I'm glad I did, because it helped me appreciate that moment.
I'm wondering how many people actually, if you're listening to this or watching this, comment down below. Did you watch the Adam Eve special? Because I'm curious how many people got to experience that. And was it a good idea, Shoff, to split it off, or should they have included it somehow, weaved it into as flashbacks or a narrative into the actual main storyline? I'm curious, because I don't know too many people. I haven't spoken to too many people that when that Adam Eve special came out, they're like, oh yeah, this is great. This is more Invincible. Because it was before this season. It was in between the two seasons. So I'm curious to see how that works. But what you said about the dad, Fred Tatasciore, who again played multiple characters. I love him.
He had a character in every scene. I swear, in every scene, the dude was in it. And at one point, it wasn't even like he was trying. He was just doing the same Fred voice. I was like, okay, all right, we're just gonna. He is a typecast dude. He's always playing like the super imposing, big, burly characters. So
I love him. Someone else who I love, Shoff, which I don't know if I've ever gotten your take on, is Ben Schwartz. And in this episode, he plays Russ, the astronaut. And I was just laughing the entire time. And his voice, like his vocal characteristics, brings something of comedy to it. Like this is not the serious guy. Like you don't want his voice when it's playing a serious character.
No.
I loved Russ. What did you think of Ben Schwartz in this episode?
Loved him, but I love Ben Schwartz. Like I know we both know somebody who absolutely hates Ben Schwartz. Like
I don't know why.
In terms of people that this person despises, Ben Schwartz is like at the top of the list.
I don't
which
know
is really
why.
unfair, but it's just how it goes. But yeah, Ben Schwartz I think is a lot of fun. He is very like charming an actor, and everything he does, he's very memorable, and you cannot take that away from him. Like no matter what role he's in, you always remember those scenes, you quote those scenes, you use gifs of those scenes. Yes, I said gif, not gif. I'm not gonna call it a gif. I love everything he's in. When he played Sonic, he was fantastic. When he was in Parks and Rec, he was fantastic. There's speculation that he might be playing Plastic Man in the new
Ooh.
DC, whatever you want to call it, the new DCU. I don't know. It's ironic because if that does become true, that will be the second character he's played that has stretchy powers.
Oh, yeah.
Because playing
Yeah.
this Rust guy and being basically a Martian and having this like shape-shifting abilities, it's pretty cool, pretty fun.
Yeah. The play on that fish out of water, like he doesn't know what it's like to be human. He doesn't know
Right.
the customs. It's just that comedy is there. You know, it's from the comics, but I loved all of his scenes when he didn't know like how to warm up the frozen pizza, and like in his apartment when you look, the mail had piled up in the background because it's like he doesn't know about the mail.
Yep.
He doesn't know about the rent. He doesn't know anything
What was it
about
with his boss? He was worried he was going to get killed or fired. I can't remember. What was the? It was funny because he like completely misinterpreted the circumstances. Because again, like he's not from here. He doesn't. He's just trying to fit in. But
it was, and he said something about his head. Your head not screwed on right or something. And then he looks in the mirror. He's like, my head not right. So yeah, all of that stuff with Russ was fantastic. Oh, Shaw, I don't know if we mentioned this on a previous episode, but also in that Adam Eve special, Tatiana Maslany, who played
Yes.
She-Hulk, was the lizard. She was one of the lizard ladies. And in this episode, thanks to X-Ray,
yep, I saw
I
this too.
noticed she played the forewoman in the when Adam Eve was setting up at the construction site. That one I never would have caught because she's in such a small role. But then the fish princess or queen,
Yep.
that is another role, and she's doing kind of, it's not her natural voice, so she's putting on some inflections. But do you, when you hear that or when you see Tatiana Maslany, do you start thinking She-Hulk, or what's your feeling? What's your vibe when you see that?
Pants get tight. Pants get really tight. Mommy, sorry. Mommy, sorry. Mommy, sorry. I crush hard on Tatiana. So I do think of She-Hulk, and that sends me spiraling. But yeah, she had a lot of roles too. Now I want to talk real briefly about her character, but also the underwater stuff. So
Yes.
Since I'm more recently read on some of the issues of Invincible, I know that that's not how the story goes.
Ooh.
So in the source material, and this is fine, by the way, it's totally, I have no gripes that they went a different way, because that's, you kind of have to, right? Otherwise, if you just follow it to the T, you're not surprising viewers who are loyal to the source material. You want to give them something fresh, something new. But I kind of think that the comic book version of this is the better story. And I think that when they decide which path they go, I think in this sense, they went the wrong way. So in the comic book, because of the whole circumstances of killing the king of Atlantis, or whatever the guy's, Aquarius, or however his name is, Invincible has to go down to Atlantis, and he has to, in a sense, he has to marry the princess or the queen, but then he also has to have public sex with her in the center of like this huge like Coliseum. And that's after, I guess, he vanquishes, or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, like, so he has to do that. And the only way out of it is if someone else demonstrates a heroic act to save the queen or whatever. And so he like conspires with another Atlantis amphibian dude who really like has the hots for the queen, and is able to sort of position this other guy so that he can deal like a death blow to the person that he's fighting in this trial by combat, so that they end up together versus Invincible and the Atlantis chick. And like and then you see like at the end of it, they're about to like bump uglies, the two fish, and I'm like, that's the funnier story. Like that's the one we should have seen. So I understand why they changed it, just to keep things fresh, but to me, like, that's the better, funnier story to tell.
Oh man, yeah. Sometimes with the adaptations, it's very interesting to see what they choose to include and what they choose to change.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is an interesting one, and I had forgot that. I remember liking that issue when it came out, but again, this is like 15 years ago. I haven't read it since. But,
yeah, and then you got Tatiana voicing this character, and I'll tell you what, if I was in Invincible's shoes and circumstances presented themselves, there might be some bubbles, folks. There might be some bubbles.
Man, Shoff's getting X-rated on our show today. Aquaria was her name. I looked her up on X-Ray. the service on Amazon Prime Video that we talked about, where it showed her. It shows all the voice actors and everybody that's playing it. But yeah, I thought overall there was a lot to like in this episode. A lot of comedy with Russ and the lizard, or sorry, the Martian storyline. We had like the Lizard King storyline at the end, and then like you mentioned, Shaw, the Angstrom Levy kind of stinger at the end, the mid credits thing. So there's a lot of stuff that they're tying up here. A lot of these storylines that they're weaving together. Eve and her family, and then we didn't even touch on Darkwing when he went into the other
Shadowverse.
Yeah, so that was cool, and there's a lot of I think that's kind of like a play on Cloak and Dagger from Marvel. As we talked about in the last episode, there's a lot of things that Invincible kind of comments on for other comic books and kind of tries to improve upon. So I think that was a fun little side tangent that we had.
Real quick, I wanted to mention, I loved the when they were in the parallel universe or dimension and Angstrom was interrogating Invincible. And then that universe's version of Cecil and I'm blanking on the other dude's name. Douglas or something.
Yeah, I think it's Doug. Yeah.
Doug. Yeah. They've come out, but they're women. And it just, and it doesn't look like they tried. It's just like a wig and like dresses like on them. Right. And I laughed. I was like, that's good. That's pretty funny.
Yes. That was fantastic. I also lolled when I saw that. So a lot of great stuff to be had in episode 2. I'm hoping that the next episode just continues because, Shaw, we are halfway through this portion of Invincible. Right. Yeah, we are only getting 4 episodes for this half, and then sometime next year we're going to get the remaining 4 for this episode. So hopefully that 4th episode we get some type of juicy cliffhanger, Shaw, that we can hang our teeth on, hang our hats on. But I am enjoying talking Invincible with you, Shaw, as always. Thank you very much for joining me, my friend. And thank you, listeners, for joining us, or viewers if you're on YouTube. Don't forget, you can always leave a comment, leave a super thanks if you're really feeling generous. That helps us here in the podcast, helps us in the Vactor-Verse, so that we can hire the Mauler twins to get us some better some better technology. So excellent, my friends. Thank you very much. Shaw, I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
Do you have an Invincible closing for us?
I do. Yeah. It just came to me a moment ago, so I'm like so ready for it. It was like
Shaw
struck my brain. Vactor and I love to get busy with fishies under the water, and you should too.
What?
I mean, maybe.
What was your first college girlfriend experience like? Did you put a sock on the door? Was it that type of an experience for you, Shaw?
Well, I lived at home.
Well, that's awkward.
There definitely were some times where I had to sneak a girl out with the parents in the master bedroom, of course.
Hey.
You know, so like middle of the night, you gotta go. You gotta get out of here. But I'll tell you this real quick. The college girlfriend I had, man, that screwed me up. I ended up failing that semester because I was so focused on the girl.
Dang.
And I almost got kicked out of Arizona State University. But that's
Whoa!
That is a long story for another day. But just giving you a little taste, little tidbit.
All right. If you guys want to hear Shaw's story about how he almost got kicked out of ASU, leave a comment down below and we'll be sure to feature it on a future episode. But this episode, we're going to be talking all about Invincible Season 2, Episode 3. I don't know if this was like divided into 2 episodes. Did you notice there was like a cut in between and it was like half a credit? And I was like, what? I checked the thing and I was like, wait a minute, there's still half an episode left. So I don't know exactly what that was, but this machination was this episode. Shaw, we're more than halfway through the halfway point of this season.
That's true. Yeah.
What did you think of this episode?
I loved this episode. Or I loved this episodes.
Yes.
I was not expecting to get an Alan the Alien centric episode, and that was brilliant. I think they just made like a hard cut at the end of that, just because like, how do you like transition into and back to like the Grayson storyline? So like,
yes,
I think that's just why they like did like that quick credit scene or something like that. But man, the voice acting choices and casting were chef's kiss.
We
The story is being propelled forward, and now we're definitely venturing into stuff I have not read yet in the comics, which I'm kind of happy about because that just makes it new and fresh, and I have no idea where they're going with it. So that's fun. But I loved it. What did you think?
Yes, I also loved it, and this continues to be my favorite show on TV. I know last week you were less than thrilled. I was still enjoying this, and this is just continuing to be, as some people say, show up a banger after a
That's
banger. It
right.
just continues to be great, and the show blows my mind when I see the voice cast. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Whoever the casting director is, one day I'll look it up, should get an Emmy Award because they just continue to just cast these great actors in
Yeah.
multiple roles. And this one was no different.
Yeah, let's talk about the casting of some stuff. So,
yes.
the Alan the Alien episode, we get a narrator, Paul F. Tompkins,
Yes.
Dr. Miglimo from Lower Decks, as well as plenty of other things that he's done.
Oh,
But he had a
yes.
very iconic voice, able to pick out in a heartbeat. And then when I didn't think that was enough, Peter Cullen shows up, one of my absolute most favorite voice actors of all time, Optimus Prime himself. Optimus Prime. I adore this man and what he's done for our childhoods as well as into these mainstream Transformers movies. Gosh, there's few stronger than Peter Cullen. And to cast him as Thaddeus was, we'll get into it, but I think a brilliant choice because it makes you think something about a character because of the characters he's played before. And then by the end, you are totally subverted on those expectations. So,
Which is something I always loved in the comic. So I'm like you, hearing Optimus Prime. It's kind of like hearing Kevin Conroy's voice, and it's just any role that he was in, I was loving, and it brought me back to my childhood. Peter Cullen's the same way, and he's even older. Like he was even from a longer period back in my childhood. So hearing his voice again was fantastic. Bringing Alan back was amazing because he's one of my favorite characters.
Seth Rogen.
He's one of my favorite characters in the comics and continues to be in the show. The Tatiana Maslany as Alan's girlfriend.
Swing.
Hearing her voice again, it was like, oh man, I love all of these choices that they're making. Speaking of, like you said, subverting your expectations, this episode did it, Shoff, and that's what the comic did multiple times. I'm wondering, actually, I don't think we've talked about this off mic. Are you at this point in the comic yet? Have you surpassed? Okay, so this show has...
he's in college, so that part is
Okay.
right. Mark Grayson is in college, but he has not been met by this. I'm gonna butcher the alien species, but like the mantis species,
yeah,
Thraxians or whatever they're called. Haven't seen that, so that was a total surprise. The whole Thaddeus thing and seeing like Alan's backstory, none of that has happened. Oh, we've seen Alan. He's had a sparring session with Invincible, and that's when we found out that he was supposed to be going to Urath and not Earth. And but I think that was the extent of what I've seen for Alan in the comics. It's hard for me because I'm reading and watching at the same time, so I'm trying to like keep them divided on where I saw what. But I definitely have not had the glimpse into the Alan like Unopen storyline.
Okay. Because when he first shows up, it was in the show. You might be wondering, hey, why is he one of your favorite characters? And it's because of all of the other things that happen later in the comic. So I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read the comic. So I have future knowledge of what's going to happen. So I won't spoil it, but just to say,
I have to tell you about the future.
A letter. I'll give Shoff a letter 30 years in the past, and then he'll read it. But that alien species, I'm trying to look up his name because he's one of my favorite comedians, one of my favorite actors.
Oh, Rob Delaney.
Yes, Rob Delaney.
Yeah.
He is like, his voice also makes me laugh. So hearing him again as that alien species at the end was fantastic.
Well,
let's save that.
I was going to say he had a cool intro because he technically was playing two
Seance
characters.
Dog. Yes.
Seance Dog, which was really wild.
That is something that goes throughout the entire comic run, that Seance Dog. And that was always something that Kirkman put in the background, like you'd put it on posters and T-shirts of Mark.
Oh, okay.
So that also was a fun Easter egg for the comic fans.
When Mark has to throw away his action figures and throws them in the dumpster, man, I felt that. I have not thrown mine away, thank goodness. But
I was going to say, I thought about you when I saw that.
but I have a huge crate of them sitting right next to my desk. And the intention for me is to do what my uncle did for me, because my uncle was a huge inspiration for me with comic books and stuff. But he had a bunch of action figures, and he handed them down to me. And I'm going to hand down all of mine to my nephews who live in Arizona. So my plan is this Christmas to just box them all up and send them off, and then just my brother will send me videos of all of their adventures, which will be a lot of fun. But there will definitely be a little bit of remorse over the idea of having to part with them after having them and collecting them for as long as I have. So, but it's for a good cause for sure.
Yes, man. I am also thinking about that right now. But that was a cool storyline of him getting into college. And, I also think about where I am now in life versus where I was when I was reading the comic 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I was much closer to Mark's age and what he was going through at that time versus now being,
yeah, you could relate.
a father. And like I said, 15 years later, I'm a different person now than I was when I was reading that comic.
Yeah.
So that also is interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that, but actually, my good friends over at the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast, they've covered Invincible extensively. If you haven't checked them out, they've been previous guests on the show, but they are fantastic. They do a great podcast. But they were talking about how their experience now with Invincible is different than when they were when the comic was first coming out.
I can see that for sure.
So that brought up into my mind. I thought about that. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Because it has been 15 years. And I've said on a previous episode, I don't quite remember every single thing that has happened in the show or in the comic, but the show is kind of reminding me and refreshing me.
Well, and the show is really finding ways to consolidate, expedite the story to get to certain points. There's there's 150, I think, issues, or somewhere around 150 issues in total. So there's a lot of content to get through. I think I'm on like issue 20 or 21. So I'm only scratching the surface. I'm probably about halfway through the first compendium. So,
and they have took a massive jump in this episode, time jump. So they are moving at a good pace. I wonder if they're going either to go beyond the comic, or are they going to just kind of condense everything into maybe 5 seasons, let's say.
Interesting.
Because it seems like they're on a breakneck pace. But
I want to get what happened with Game of Thrones when they go beyond the source material.
Yes. Hopefully that doesn't happen here, but I do want to get to the ending of what happens, but we'll save that for a second. You were going to say?
I was going to say this episode was full of Segsy time, ASMR, lip smacking, and
Tatiana Maslany
with tentacles. Tatiana with tentacles. Excuse me while I J and my P all over my bees.
This was a very MA13, whatever the rating is. But
it was one of those things where you if you were like younger and maybe watching, you're like, hey, mom, dad, let's watch this new show together. And that scene pops up and you're like, you don't want to look over and see them looking at you watching it, like, because they're not watching the scene, they're watching your reaction to the scene.
Yes. So. The Adam Eve Invincible game just came out. It's an turn-based RPG,
right?
But it goes back into the first season and Adam Eve's kind of what she was doing right before you saw her in the show,
cool.
And it deals with her parents, and there's a scene in the game that reminded me of what you just said.
Really?
Kind of an awkward thing. So definitely
turn-based sexy time.
I'm enjoying the Adam Eve video game, but I'll talk about that in another episode, perhaps. What did you think about the Guardians of the Globe, the Rudy and Amanda storyline, which I don't remember? Was that hinted at in the first season? Because I have the comic in my head. Was it hinted? Do you remember?
Yes, I think vaguely. Okay. I think that's what kind of garnered his desire to want to be a human boy.
Okay, good. All right.
Was so that he could relate to her in a different way because he was catching feelings for her, I think.
Okay, good. Yeah. That was something I was thinking about, but that whole plot line and storyline is good. I liked seeing his brain activity when he saw her.
Yeah.
And two things: the movie where they had to get the older adult person to get the ticket, the R-rated movie, and then the first burger experience with
Yeah.
Rudy.
I was a little worried with him going into seeing a scary movie and not really having like flexed his fear muscles yet. I thought there was going to be more to that, like some kind of big scene happen while he was at the movie theater, like him losing control or something.
Yeah, I didn't know where that was going, and then they just cut to the
cut to
burger, and I was like,
Mart, and I was like,
"Is
okay.
this after, or did they just not go see the movie?" Yeah,
But there
so
is a
that was
line in the Burger Mart section of the episode that I wanted to get your take on, and also
Yes.
ask you a question. So
yes.
Monster Girl, this is after he takes the first bite of his burger, and he's like, "Oh wow, this is actually pretty appetizing." Because he looks at it and he's like, "I don't think so." But she says, "A good burger and fries is one of the greatest pleasures in life," and I was like, "Yeah, that's so true. That is so true." And it made me wonder, what is your favorite place, Vactor, to get a burger? And when you get that burger, what type of burger are you getting?
You said favorite burger and
Well, like favorite place. So like it could be fast food, it could be a restaurant. But like what place do you go to, and then what's the burger that you order? Because like there's tons of types of burgers out there. So.
okay, man, put me on the spot, Shaw.
Ha ha. See, this is what it's like. This is what it's like.
There's
Soak
a
it up.
burger that no longer exists where I'm located, but there's a bar downtown Phoenix where I live called Bitter and Twisted.
Oh, I've been there.
They used to have a ramen burger where the bun is ramen. It's like fried noodles. And that is the greatest hamburger I've ever
Wow.
had in my life. Red Robin also had one, but it wasn't as good as the Bitter and Twisted one.
Interesting.
So ramen burger, which I had first heard about it coming out of LA and the food trucks over there, is my favorite burger of all time. I can't really get it anymore, so maybe it'll come back again later. But if we're talking about like one that I can go out and get right now, there's a place called Zen Burger in downtown Gilbert.
Yeah.
And every single burger I've had from them has been fantastic. They're more of a sit-down restaurant than fast food.
Yeah.
But they have names like the Bruce Lee burger, and it's like it's got kicking sauce or whatever. Like everything. There's a pineapple burger, and they always have a burger of the month or burger of the week or something.
They got those truffle fries.
Oh, those are great. Actually, everything from Zen Burger is great. I
do miss that place. I miss the restaurant scene in like Phoenix, like and surrounding cities.
Come back.
I know. Yeah. The restaurant scene there is really, really, after being like in various parts of the country so far, like just in the past few years, bar none, there's nothing holds a candle. Like their restaurant scene is peak. At least for the places I've been otherwise.
Yes.
Man, that sounds good. You know, you could kind of recreate it at home. Just grab a couple of ramen packets. Don't even cook them. Just have them be like nice and crunchy, and then stick a burger patty in between. And then you film an ASMR video.
Ooh. Actually, you know what's great about I don't know how they do it, but it's crunchy. The noodles are crunchy, but they're also soft. So I don't know how they get that combination, but it's like a hamburger. It's like a bun for a hamburger. So
by the way, listeners, you might hear a squealing going on in the background. That is my 18-month-old. So just a heads up.
I thought you guys said that's your stomach because you're getting hungry.
Right. No, I want that ramen burger in my belly. I haven't had breakfast, so no matter what you say, I'm gonna be dripping with drool. So
yeah. So that burger scene was great, and then also we had also talking about the Guardians of the Globe, the Rex and Kate relationship, which we kind of saw the interplaying between Rex and Eve, and then Kate and the Immortal. But the thing that she said of why she's into the Immortal was very poignant, and like I felt like Rex in that situation where it kind of caught me off guard. And I was like, "Oh man, now I feel bad, even though I didn't do anything. I feel like Rex in this situation." So that was a fun scene.
But even still, you've got Zooks like not really taking responsibility for anything. You know,
I can't picture any other voice now. So when I read the comic originally, Mantzoukas was not the voice that I pictured. He hadn't even come around yet. He wasn't even popular when the comic was out, and I was playing the game, like I was telling you, the Adam Eve game, and he plays a large role in that. I could only picture Mantzoukas' voice because it's kind of like a visual graphic novel. So there's text on the screen when Rex is talking, and all I could think about was Manzukis. So
what's up, jerks?
he's now like Kevin Conroy. He like inserted himself, and when I read that character, I'm only thinking about his voice.
That's good. That's good. He's cemented himself in the legacy of Invincible for sure.
Yes. We had the Spouses of Superheroes support group.
Yeah,
with
SOS.
Debbie,
that was cool.
Taking some of her grief. And then the other person that she speaks to outside of the group is Davine Diggs from Hamilton.
Diggs, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And again, back to the casting. It's like, this is just another great actor that I've liked him in everything he's ever been in, but subverting your expectation again, kind of thinking, oh, he's going to be our friend and he's going to be a nice guy. You better not come back here. It's not going to be a safe place for you. It was like,
well, and you got to wonder who else in that group is in the same boat, right? Like after he revealed that, I'm thinking, I mean, Omni-Man took them all out. So if they're all going to this meeting, or if, you know, granted they're across the globe, right? So like they're not all going to be there, but man, that would be really tough. It'd be a really tough thing. Talk about collateral damage and fallout. Yeah.
That was a poignant moment. So all of that stuff is happening, Shaw. Let's get to the ending. Did you see? I've known about this.
Yeah.
And since season 1, I've been holding on to this and not trying to spoil it for anybody. So I want to know your thoughts experiencing it for the first time.
You're talking about when the alien takes Invincible back to the planet?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I assumed...
Did you know?
No, that part had not come up in the comics yet, so I didn't know what to expect. But I also felt like, from a narrative perspective, it made sense that William would be the one to convince Invincible to go based on what went down with Rick, because they hesitated and Invincible didn't help. So that gave him the proper motivation to leave, because otherwise you're like, what reason does Invincible have to trust this random alien who just showed up, right? Like, that to me, like, if you or I were in the same position, would we automatically trust this alien and go with him on a spaceship on a 6-day Earth, 6 Earth day mission to another galaxy or whatever?
I don't even like driving 6 minutes, Shaw. I don't like commuting. So 6-day commute.
Yeah.
When he said that, I was like, I would have stayed on Earth.
So to me, like, that was going to be a big leap for the character to decide to just do that and miss, like, theoretically a month's worth of time.
Cecil going against Cecil's direct order when he's trying to be on Cecil's good side.
And he'd already made plans to meet up with his mom on that Sunday. That's not going to happen. He just got busy with his girlfriend, maybe for the first time.
That's what it seemed like.
Yeah. And now he's going to leave for a month. Like, that's not going to go well for the relationship either. So just, kind of crazy. So crazy choice. I don't know if I would have done the same thing that Invincible did, but I feel like he was feeling the guilt based on what William had said, and so he felt inclined to go in. And also, he's out to prove that he's not his dad. So that's, I think, the driving force for him with everything is he's not his dad. And I gotta say, I do relate to that sometimes. I'm not looking to poo-poo, my dad, but there are certain things that, for me, I want to pave a different way. And
yes.
So that was a surprise, but then getting there and seeing that there wasn't a huge calamity, there wasn't a bunch of meteors falling or anything like that, and then the big reveal that the monarch of this alien species is none other than Omni-Man. I did not think we were going to see him so soon. That surprised me.
And that's what I meant by it. It really takes a leap in the comics, because there's a lot of time that passes where, like I said, the comic is coming out on a monthly basis. So it might have been, I haven't looked it up, it might have been 2 years in real time before he comes back. And the whole time, just like in the show from season 1 to season 2, the entire time you're thinking, this is the biggest villain, this is the worst thing. So what's going to happen next is going to be very interesting, Shaw. I can't wait to see, and I'm very excited where this is going. This was a very well done episode. They packed a ton of stuff into this. There's so many storylines that are going on where it almost feels like this is not necessarily just Invincible's story now. It's like the world, like we're following everybody in this world. So it's fun because not a single storyline is boring to me. Every single one has been interesting, and I want to see, I cared about them from the comics, but even if I was just watching this show, I've already, fallen in love with each one of these. I'm invested in them
Oh
to see
yeah,
what happens.
totally.
Anything else, Shaw, from
A couple
your
quick
notes?
notes. We had Leah Thompson
Oh,
in the
yes,
SOS.
yes,
So we
yes.
had Lorraine. You're gonna be my wife, Lorraine. So we
He's
had
an
her in this.
absolute dream.
Yeah, so that was great. I was putting her casting on my hope chest. On William's wall, there was a poster for not Lady Gaga, but Lady Yaya. That was funny to me. I laughed at that.
There was another one too. There was another like pop culture. I can't remember what it was, but it was another riff on something.
And then perhaps one of the best lines, shapeshifter. Shapesmith. Shapesmith.
Yes.
Sorry. He says, "I'd like to run while remaining in a stationary location. Is that cool beans?" And then he just hops on the treadmill, doesn't turn it on, and he's facing the wrong way, and he's just running in place. Oh,
again, Ben Schwartz, like in, I don't know, a minute of screen time steals the show. Like every part of that was great.
And what's awesome is I believe that if Ben Schwartz were playing it in live action, that's exactly what he would have just come up with on his own to do.
Yes.
As like an
he
improv,
is a great improv,
smart, like comedy type guy. So yeah. The back and forth with Alan the alien being dead, then alive, and then I assume dead because of the surprise reveal with Thaddeus. That threw me, man, because I was like, it was roller coaster of emotions. Like, no, yes, no.
And that's how the comic is. It's like, that's what I love about this. Yes.
But yeah, man, I don't have much more in the way of notes, but it was an excellent episode. Probably one of my favorites of the entire series so far. I have to say.
Yes, perfect, man. I'm loving this show. Are you loving it, viewers? Anyone who is listening to this on their audio platforms or video, if you're on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, don't forget, you can always leave us a like and comment down below, letting us know how you're thinking about the show. And right next to that like button, there's a little thank you, a little super thanks that you can give us a little donation and help us out here in the Vactor-Verse. We are thanking you very much. We got some great stuff coming down the line. We got some Scott Pilgrim reviews. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off just came out today on Netflix. All 8 episodes dropped. So we are going to be covering it here in the Vactor-Verse. So stay tuned. We've got one more episode of Invincible left before they take their hiatus until next year. And then some Marvel What If is the next series that's coming out after that. So tune in again to the Vactor-Verse. Like I said, we've got some great stuff coming down the line. Shaw, thank you very much for joining us, my friend. You are the good Thaddeus of our universe. You've got the Optimus voice.
Rarely calls upon us at a moment of our choosing.
And Shaw,
in the beginning, there was the Cube.
Shaw would never turn off your life support, viewer. Just remember that.
No.
Shaw, you got a closing for us?
Yes, I'm gonna do it in my Optimus Prime voice.
Yeah.
I love Tatiana with tentacles, and you should too. Now roll out.
Shaw, if your dad went away and after a number of years you found him, or he found you, I should say, he came to you and he said, "Son, I need your help. I've got a new son with another wife in another state, another county, another town." What would your reaction be, Shaw? Would it be to give him the bird, or would you accept him with open arms and say, "I have a baby brother"? What would your reaction be, Shaw?
You could be a little bit like Mark, and I'd say,
"Ooh, we're getting right into it here in the Vactor-Verse." We're talking about Invincible Season 2 with Shaw, and I am Vactor. It's been a while
since I first blew your head off with this, and then I took your teeth and I punched them in.
This is the season, or I should say the mid-season finale, Shaw. We got 4 episodes. This was episode 4, and then we're getting 4 episodes next year, sometime next year. We don't have a specific release date, but
Hopefully,
this is
hopefully January. That's what I
oh
want.
yeah.
Just
Oh
January. Give me
man, that
January.
would be great because again, as I said previously, Shoff, this is my favorite show on television right now. So I can't wait for more Invincible. But let's get right into this episode, Shoff. What were you thinking? Because this is also something that I have known about the comics and I had been waiting to hear your reaction. So what do you think, Shaw, about this episode?
Ooh, this episode was awesome. Awesome. I mean, the last episode ended off on that crazy cliffhanger, the return of Nolan Grayson, Omni-Man. Hey, son, it's been a while. And just so cool to see this unfold. I mean, Mark is so far away from Earth and doesn't have much of a choice here. And so what's going down is like, I mean, you're between a rock and a hard place. Like you have to make a really tough decision, but you don't really have any good options. And that's Mark right now. And man, I mean, he proves he's a hero. He always does the right thing, no matter how much it hurts him in the process. But great episode. Excellent finale. I mean, slightly depressing. There's some moments that are like, just full of despair. But overall, this episode is fantastic. Makes me really excited for what's to come. And quick name drop to our buddies over at Invincipod. Gosh, they called it. I was watching their episode. We recorded right after we had our episode. And man, both both of them really, really knew it. Ralph and James, they kind of called what we're expecting this episode to end with, and I was like, man, you guys know your stuff. So shout out to Invincipod and Ralph and James, because they're a couple of awesome dudes who know their Invincible comics for sure.
Yes. You can check out that episode that Shuff is alluding to on this feed in the Vactor-Verse, or head over to Invincipod and check out the latest episode. I think they are going to be recording their season 2 episode 4 review right around the time we record this. So we'll probably be putting our episodes out simultaneously. But yeah, shout out to Invincipod, the best podcast on the internet, specifically about Invincible. I really liked the opening of this episode, Shuff, where we saw Nolan's journey through space.
Yes.
And how he became the monarch, basically, of the Thraxans. And I was thinking about, would the black hole even kill him, or would he just be like Loki at the end of time, just here I am, like I'm just sitting here doing nothing? I was wondering about that because the Viltrumites, now even though they can die, there's specific things that they can survive. So I was just wondering, is a black hole something that they could survive? But I guess we'll never know, Shaw.
I got a question for you. So
yes,
the visuals in that particular moment, whether it was like the tiny version of Nolan just like flying across the low end of the screen, and like these beautiful cosmos and burning suns and whatever else, like, and then that shot of him like in the center of the frame and the black hole, him basically on like the event horizon, and it was such gorgeous imagery. And I'm wondering, was that something that they just came up with and visualized for the show, or is it something that you remember from the art of the issues?
I don't remember that specifically. That's not one that stands out, and it's been a while since I read the comic, so I really need to go back and do my reread. But I've had so many other comics that I'm reading at the moment, but I don't recall that specifically. But
I'll probably answer my own question in the next couple issues, because I'm at the part where Science Dog is showing up. And so I know that what's to come is Science Dog is actually a Thraxan in disguise, and he's going to bring Mark with him to his planet, and then all this stuff is going to go down. So like, I feel like I'm very close to what's happening in the TV show, which is great because it's kind of fun to read them in tandem, not intentionally. It's just kind of unfolding that way through timing. So it's good.
And are you still enjoying watching the episode first and then reading the comic in that order?
Well, it started out intentionally that way, but now they're kind of happening at the same time, which is an interesting way to do it. And I kind of like it that way, because that helps me really isolate the differences in the narrative, and like, hey, this worked better, this didn't work better, or this didn't work as well. It's been a lot of fun. I really liked it.
Here's a question for you, Shuff. Now that we're at the midway point, now that we're at this break, this hiatus, are you going to put a hiatus on your reading, or are you going to continue?
Ooh.
And are you going to get
Oh.
further along in the comic than in the show?
Squid
You
Pro
don't
Row.
you don't have to decide right now, but I'm just wondering.
That's a good question. I think there's so many other comics that I need to attack, but I don't. I don't feel like I want to leave Invincible hanging. So I feel like I probably will keep it up, but in a more casual sense, so that I don't get too far ahead of the storyline happening on TV. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, we'll continue to check in on you as we continue to our episodes.
You were talking about the Omni-Man imagery
Yes.
and like that beginning opening. And what I found was really cool is they found a way to show parallels between Omni-Man and Mark's mom. And I don't know why, but I'm blanking on Mark's mom's name. That just eludes me. What is it?
Debbie.
Oh,
or
Debbie.
Deborah.
Okay, yeah. So Debbie, her like walking across the frame, and she's barefoot, downtrodden. She's in full-on despair.
I
and
was like,
depressed
whose
mode.
feet are those? When I saw that, I was like, oh, okay.
So good, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a Quentin Tarantino shot for sure. He's like, can we get a little bit closer? Can we pause that for a moment? Can we slow that down? But like she's
Also,
walking across.
Real quick, some great needle drops of both of those.
Yes.
Both
Agreed.
those journeys. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, but she's walking across and it's like the same like as Nolan was at the bottom of the screen, she's at the bottom of the screen. They're both sort of listless in what they're doing. Like I really appreciated that because they're both in a sense of despair for different reasons, but related reasons. And it was really, really cool.
Yeah. And I really like now that I don't know if they necessarily planned it this way, but the 2-year break between seasons 1 and season 2, there really was some time for you to think Omni-Man is terrible. Nolan is he's the worst dad of all time. That's the same thing that happened in the comic where it was like years in real time where I'm thinking, man, Omni-Man sucks. He's a bad dad. And then he comes back into the comic. He comes back into the story. And I was like, wait a minute. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's not the worst guy in the world. So I'm interested to get your take on that as he comes back. What were your initial feelings at the end of the last episode and then going into this one? What were you thinking of him coming back? Like, were you thinking, what does that mean for this story as Omni-Man comes back?
That's really interesting. I did write down that I thought that it was, how did I describe it? It's interesting that they're able to make us empathize with a mass murderer like Omni-Man, somebody who's so violent and showed so much disregard for human life, but yet still we're compelled to want to see him be okay or reunite with Mark or find some common ground or whatever. But like, he's a very interestingly written character, and I would argue the most layered character of the show, more so than Mark, who's arguably the lead of the show. I would say that Omni-Man is the more layered character, more complex.
Yeah.
And that's really cool because oftentimes villains, especially villains, are one note. They're one dimensional. They are either all good, they view themselves, they're all bad, but they view themselves as all good. But in this case, it's gray. Everything's gray. And even and Mark has to sort of operate in a sense of gray in order to survive. Like he has to start thinking like a Viltrumite, as Nolan says. And man, epic.
Yeah. So
epic.
Again, I think we talked about it on last week's show. They're weaving in so many storylines and all of them are good. There's not a single one that I'm not compelled by. And I love the Maulers when we check in on them, and King Mauler and the clone. It's funny that they said this is the first time we can actually say which one is the original, which one is the clone. And that comic relief of them, every time I just see the Maulers, I start laughing. And it's funny because 2 times in this episode, I thought about the Adam Eve video game that just came out, the RPG, and there's a Mauler section in there, and it made me think about the show. And then also later on, Kill Cannon, he has a big part in the game. And when I saw him show up in this, I had just played the game recently, and the Kill Cannon level showed up, and I was like, oh man, this is great. I get more of that character that I just saw in the game. So I'm actually having a similar experience of you, Shoff, a little bit with the game and the show, where you're having the comic and the show. So I'm having two different mediums crisscross.
Do you find it overwhelming a little bit from a narrative perspective to have normally, I mean, when we watch like a movie or something, or even a TV show, usually there's an A storyline, a B storyline. Occasionally there's a C storyline. But in Invincible, it's like A, B, C, D, E, F, G storylines.
Right.
And they're all happening concurrently. And I mean, I'm able to follow it, but it's unusual. It's unusual storytelling than what we're accustomed to. And I wanted to get your take on that.
Well, our friends over at Invincipod, I think, called it out. This is really like Invincible universe. And in the comics, they ended up spreading out and telling all these stories and having separate spin-offs and side issues. So the Invincible universe already exists in the comics. It's already been spread out. But the show, I feel like, is doing a great job also of telling all these stories of not just Mark, not just Omni-Man. Like, they're telling everybody's backstory. And I'm really enjoying that just because like I was saying, I haven't found any of them to be boring. If there was a boring one, I think I would be more like, man, let's just get back to Invincible. And I think I would feel more overwhelmed. But for me, also knowing the story already, I guess I'm enjoying that it's getting to that place where I know in the comics, I know all of these layers, all these plot lines in the comics. So I'm like, oh yeah, they're getting to this one. They're getting to this one. So years of comic reading is now coming back to me and like, oh yeah, this is a fun take. And hearing each actor's what they present or what they bring to it is fantastic. And I think we're going to talk about that when we do our Scott Pilgrim Takes Off review, how each of those actors bring something out in the characters. The same thing here. Omni-Man, hearing J.K. Simmons and hearing Stephen Ewan, all of their performances, all the subtleties that when I was reading the comic, I didn't necessarily have that take on it or and it's the same, material, but they might be bringing something different with the tone of their voice or their inflection. Like, that's why they're actors. That's why they get paid the big bucks. But for you, Shoff, I'm curious, when you're reading it now, are you hearing these voices in your head?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think it just helps. I mean, I like it. And I think their casting, if their casting wasn't great, then I might not feel so inclined to assign a voice to the character I'm reading. But all the casting is incredible. And it just makes sense. I mean, even getting Sandra Oh as Mark's mom, like, she's a really like incredible actress. And you would think that these like big name actors and actresses might not want to put their name to something like an animated show, cartoon, to dumb it down. Like, I hate to call this a cartoon because it's not. Like, it is, but it isn't. It's elevated cartoon imagery. The story is far more dynamic than any cartoon I've seen, but they do. And by adding their own gravitas to it, like, they're adding layers to create a character that is fully fleshed out. So it's excellent. We didn't get as many cameos or like other voices in this episode that we've had in the past, but we did get Phil Lamar. I saw he was playing one of the Viltrumites. We got another Clancy Brown voiced character, which I am thrilled about. I don't know much about this character, but I know that he's going to factor up in a big way to what's coming because of what Ralph and James on Invincipod were hinting at. But General Krieg, and I would have not pronounced it Krieg, I would have pronounced it Craig based on how it's spelled. Right. But I'm glad he said how to say his name. General Craig, Yeah. But it's great to hear Clancy Brown voice anything. And since I'm trying to think, what was the other thing? Oh, he voiced Damien Dark as well.
Oh, right.
Yes. Damien Darkblood, not Damien Dark.
Yes, right. Yeah, whatever happened to him? Yeah.
He's stuck in hell. He's stuck in hell now.
Oh, man.
I hope he comes back because I like
back.
Damien Darkblood.
That was a great. Yeah.
I want to see Damien Darkblood, and I want to see the lion-faced guy, Battle Beast.
Yes.
I want that.
Not to spoil it, you will see Battle Beast a lot because he is, with Alan the Alien, Battle Beast is my other favorite character in the Invincible universe. So you will see Battle Beast again.
I would hope so because there's a character who could take on Viltrumites. Like, he's strong enough to do so.
Yes, and was that Michael Dorn that played Battle Beast?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It was Worf. Yes. Yeah, it was awesome.
So yeah, we're going to get some great Michael Dorn stuff coming up. I like the way that they ended this episode and trying to the struggle of Mark, I think it's also the struggle of the audience of and Debbie as well. Do you forgive this man? Is he irredeemable, to take another superhero's name, which if you haven't read Irredeemable, fantastic Mark Waid comic book, highly recommend.
I have
But
not.
is there anything that is irredeemable about Omni-Man to the point of you cannot forgive this man? At this point, right now, where we're at, Shaw, have you forgiven Omni-Man, or are you still kind of like where Mark is, kind of, you did all these bad things,
Yeah.
you lied to me? Are you still in that phase?
I think I'm a pretty forgiving person. So I think I can see, like, because you can see the conflict in him. And I think that demonstrates that there's a certain amount of humanity that has been born in him by being around other humans.
Yes.
That he's doesn't have the one track mind of domination that Viltrumites tend to. So I think we're all flawed people. I think we all make mistakes. His mistakes were huge and the kind that you can't take away or fix. But yeah, I think he's redeemable. I think he's a redeemable character. He doesn't want to accept these changes in him. And that's really the interesting part about it, is he's pushing back on his own true nature that's coming through.
Right.
But it's, from what it seems to me, and I don't know the comic, but it does seem to me like what we're building towards is Mark and Nolan versus the Viltrumites in a much bigger way.
And this is very much, I think everything that is leading up to this is going to be interesting. There's no, like you said, there's no black and white. There's a lot of shades of gray, and where you fall on it. And that's also one of the great things about the comic that Robert Kirkman created, was there's a lot of things that relatable. There's a lot of relatable things where you can put yourself in these characters' shoes and what would you do? Even the Donald, him finding out what happened to him, and that's a bigger plot line as well. So there's a lot of stuff that's coming down the pipeline, and that's the point that I'm at, is like, man, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to talk to you about it.
The other part that's really intriguing to me is I got to the part where Alan the alien has his whole encounter with the Viltrumites, and he ends up on like a hospital bed, and they put his guts back in, and they put his eyeball back in, and they reattach his arm and everything. But in the comics, he's not killed off. Like, Thetis kind of like turns to him, and that's when he's like, there's a mole. And this is after he's already in the hospital bed. So there's a difference here, because in the TV show, it pretty much looks like he just pulled the plug on Alan the alien, and then Alan's gone. But in the comics, it's open-ended, where it seems like Alan is okay. So I'm interested to see what happens there, because the implication is that this Thetis guy might actually be a Viltrumite. I don't know, right? Like, I don't know. But it seems like he might be a Viltrumite. And if that's the case, the very coalition that exists to sort of protect planets or find a fighting force that could defeat the Viltrumites is run by a Viltrumite. Like, that's wild. And that does not bode well. So,
Yes.
But it's like their Viltrumites have figured out every angle, like that, man. So
so that, keep an eye on that. Also, do you remember what Nolan's last words were to Mark?
Yes, I wanted to ask you about that. So he talks about, there's something about his books. He's like, read my books, Mark.
Yes.
So there's something to these books, and I don't, maybe it's to understand him better, or there's some message for Mark that he needs to hear. I don't know.
That, keep an eye on that. That is another plot line that is going to be explained in the next season, I hope, or the next couple episodes. So that is also a big thing. But man, I don't want to spoil it. I already know the name of the brother, because they said they let them name themselves. But I already know the name, so keep an eye on that plot line.
He's got a little purple brother now.
Yes, and
a little bug brother.
He is also, not to spoil anything, but he is a great character as well. Very much Damian from Batman lore, the Damian Wayne-esque, very the same type of personality.
Is his name like an Earth name? Like, is it like a, okay.
So very much keep an eye on that plot line. We will see very much. But man, there's so many things that are happening so fast now. It's like I'm trying to remember everything that is in the timeline of what happens. But like I said, I need to do my reread here soon. Maybe before the next couple episodes come out, maybe before the next half, I would do my reread of Invincible. But man, Chuff, just some fantastic stuff. There's very little for me to not like about
I
this show.
know.
Like I said, every plot line is just great. I'm loving everything that they're doing, and the adaptation of it from the comic books has been fantastic. Before we wrap up, did you have any other notes that you want to get to?
I just said the Mahler twins are always a good time. I did not expect that we were going to get more Mahlers back again, just because of how things were left off. I was like, oh, he's by himself now. I mean, yeah, he could always make a clone, but I kind of thought that all that technology was sort of blown up. I didn't know like what they were going to do with that, but I'm glad that he's back. It was wild to me to see how Lucan was just like putting like one finger down on Invincible's head and like just like pounding him into the dirt, into the ground, into the rock with one finger. I'm like, how are they going to fight this force? Like, that's insane. And he's like half Filtermite. Like, it was just wild. Plus, he's at the end, he's holding his own guts and he still defeats Nolan. He seemingly breaks his back. Like, and by the end of the episode, it's like they're taking Nolan's going to be killed in the morning, executed.
Oh yeah.
Invincible has like a moment to head back to Earth. Although, how is he getting back to Earth? Did they say that? I can't remember.
No, they didn't say,
because he can't just fly there on his own. He has no way doesn't know how to get there, and pretty much everybody in town was killed. So
maybe Krieg gives him a ship, and I don't even remember in the comic exactly how it happens. But yeah,
but there was a moment where I was like, "Oh man, is Omni-Man dead?" There's just like so much happening with this. So but I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Yes.
I'm so glad you introduced me to this. I had slept on this show for too long, and I'm glad I finally gave it an opportunity to watch it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying the show and then also the comic as well. And I like having your perspective on this show, having someone that was not familiar with the comic before the show. So having both sides of it has been great. Man, I am having a blast. I hope you are as well, fellow viewers and fellow listeners here in the Vactor-Verse. If you have anything that you want to talk about in the Invincible landscape, leave us a comment down below. Let us know how excited you are for the next season, or not excited for the next half of the season, I should say. Season 2, second half coming up next year in 2024. We will be here talking about it here in the Vactor-Verse. So, and don't forget, also in the Vactor-Verse, you can always leave us some thanks, some super thanks down below. That will help us in very nice ways to continue the podcast, to grow and elevate and bring you more content here in the Vactor-Verse. So thank you very much. Leave us a super thanks. Leave us a comment. Let your friends know about the Vactor-Verse. We're going to be here talking about comic books. We got Scott Pilgrim Takes Off coming out. We've got What If Season 2 coming out. So there's still, and we got Aquaman 2, if you forgot, is coming out in December. So there's still a lot of comic book stuff left for 2023 going into 2024. But I will be here. Shoff will be here. And we hope you will be too. Shoff, I'm putting you on the spot. Do you have a closing for us?
I'm kind of workshopping it in my brain right now. I don't know if it's going to come out sounding clear at all, but let's see. Okay. Neither Vactor nor I have fathered any space bug babies, and you shouldn't too.